Record.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, bro, it's been a long time and I'm just really happy to reconnect.
Yeah, man. Well, we've been off and on in touch over the years. It's not, we never really like completely fell off, which I
That's right.
really, there's such few friends that I have from that time that I've like maintained contact with.
It's more when you say that we haven't disconnected because I think that there's something that is I don't want to go off on a weird like esoteric tangent, but as I remember it, the last time that I reached out to you, and from my perspective, it was just like, wow, I have a feeling about Tristan. I want to see how he's doing. I was at a coffee shop and just kind of flowing and putting ideas to paper and that kind of thing. And I sent you a text message, and that was the morning that Ryder had been born.
Oh, snap. I don't see. It's so funny because I don't remember many of the details of that day. That's so crazy.
And it was just random, and we hadn't spoken in a long time. And I mean, not years and years and years, but just a significant amount of time. And something that day was, in my space of you. And I was like, whoa, like I want to see how he's doing, make sure everybody's on the up and up. And I reached out and you're like, yeah, bro, like let's talk. Like my son was just born. I was like, and that gave me a feeling that it was like, wow, okay. Like something is reaching up and grabbing me, and that's really important to stay aware of.
What an amazing synchronicity, man. That's so
Right.
crazy.
Right.
I mean, you and I, it's like even thinking back now, consciously I don't remember everything that we kind of went through together, but we had all sorts of, we lived together. We shared an
That's right.
apartment together when we were, I think I was 20 years old. I was almost 21. Like going into my 21st first birthday, we shared an apartment together. We hung out a lot from like the ages of 19 till 21 or so for like those 2-3 years. We were around each other a lot, all up in each other's business.
It's funny that is not unique to my experience of friendship. I'm kind of a all or nothing guy, like looking at myself in the mirror, if you will. And, I don't know what's to be said for that. I think that during that time we were both kind of, everybody hopefully is always doing this all the time, right? Just evolving and moving in a direction of their choosing and going in the way that they choose to walk. But for whatever reason, I think that we both got something out of our time together that was really helpful. I know from my perspective,
we had such different perspectives, but they were so similar. Like we had such different struggles, but at a certain level, we struggled with the same thing. Like we were trying to come to grips with certain things and certain realities. And like maybe you had a lot of strengths that I had in areas where I had weaknesses, and maybe it was similar, vice versa. Maybe, or maybe I was just a parasite. I don't know.
No, not at all. Not
it
at all.
seemed
I
like
would say that
we had a synergy, and we were both we were both learning a lot, man. You remember that time when we went to Tahoe?
Yes.
There are just so many of those Tahoe trips. Those are like some of those memories. They're so vague now, but some of them are so important to me. Like I wouldn't trade some of those moments for the world. When we stayed at
yes, sir.
that little spot with the fireplace, and we got way too drunk and we dug into each other way too much that night. But the next morning it was all good. Like we went skiing. I was snowboarding. You were skiing. Yeah, man, those are some good times.
I read somewhere a long time ago, and I held it in the back of my brain somewhere, and that was, I'm not going to be able to say it correctly or do it justice, but it was like, you have to get to the iron of another person to really create a true relationship. You feel me? If there's just surface level interaction, that's not real. And we I think both recognized that each other were formidable when we first kind of started hanging out together. And I think that that's a foundation for saying like, all right, like if things get real, like I know that this person is a worthy part of my clan, because I don't have to worry about them on a certain level, and they know that they don't have to worry about me. But as long as we can uphold honor and dignity between the two of us, we are much stronger for the association. And I think that that's you feel me? And so I think
Yeah.
that was something that I held on to because you had friends that were into skateboarding, and I always aspired to be a skateboarder, but I was a shit skateboarder. I surfed more. And so that was something that I felt like you were
I always loved surfing too. I always loved surfing, but never got too into it because it was such a steep learning curve for me. So I always loved going to the beach with you and stuff and just watch you surf. And like kind of wish I was surfing, but also kind of just like, nah, it's cold.
yeah, the sharks in the cold, and yeah, that's always
Cold,
the
lazy, maybe too
right.
much pride, didn't want to look stupid for the first few runs. It's like, it's how it goes, man. But it's so many good times. That little house with the wooden floors that we accidentally messed up skateboarding that one night that you lived in, like right up the street from I lived in that apartment across the way off Ocean.
Was that in Grant Street in
Grant Street.
the ghetto?
Yeah, that was a sketchy neighborhood, man.
Right. We
had our own little pocket like in that house, but anything right across the street, like you don't really want to mess with.
that park there was like a dope sale park, wasn't it? That yeah. How funny, dude. Santa Cruz was a wild time for me. It was a place where I kind of went off the rails, so to speak, in terms of just like my conventional path, of my education stuff. And I kind of got educated in a different way. Like I spent a lot of time in the ocean. I, tried different substances. And I think that gave me more than I would have gotten if I would have put all of that energy towards trying to jockey for position or status in a classroom. And I mean, believe me, I go back and forth in my head, about that. But I feel like, I don't know, man. I'm a special kind of crazy where I feel like I need to be as deep down into the underworld, if you will, of symbolism and balance and energy and like, awareness of subtle energies, so that I can be as high as I can when it's called for, and like be able to be exuberant and joyful and present. And it's like that dichotomy is really hard for me to maintain if I'm like in a synthetic environment. If I'm in an environment that's like bounded by rules that are just bullshit rules, and you just get people that are rule followers, like rule followers terrify me, dude. Like as I get older, I realize I'm like intellectually turned on and like emotionally interested in people that are willing to follow their own rules. And then by extension, if they have the conviction of their own, or rather the courage of their own conviction, to like accept the responsibility for choosing their own rules, because those people are going to surprise you, right? Those people are going to do something where you're like, whoa, like that came from them, that's super cool. As opposed to the people where you're like, you need another form of ID, and they're like, yeah, it's the rule, and you're just like
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you, man. And school is a very hard thing to really latch onto, especially like in the academic realm, because it's so wishy-washy, really. I mean, you start. Remember, we took like an environmental, was it environmental studies class? What was that class we had together? It was one of those it was an environmental sciences. They were talking a lot about sustainability and the carbon cycle,
right?
And I just remember,
Right.
like, I had so many questions about the narrative that was being pushed there, and the answers that I would get from academia and from professors they were like insulting to my intelligence. I'm like, you haven't asked these questions. And it was, and this was the beginning, well, not the beginning, but it was really kind of the genesis of the modern environmental movement that we see today. Because I mean, this was like 9-10 years ago. It was really starting to amp up. So we need to do something now. We need to all do something together. And what do we need to do? It's always like, well, if we have some really clever ways to tax people, if we just like make these resources really expensive, it's this weird economic manipulation. That's all the solution to this problem. But I remember that specifically, especially in my last year at UC Santa Cruz, was and I think that was you've gone back to San Jose for a little bit during that year, so I didn't see you that much. But I took another biology course that year. I was looking at maybe going into becoming like a naturopath or chiropractor. Because you were the guy who introduced me to a chiropractor, who then got me interested in chiropractic, even like
Is
as
that
a
right?
career.
Yeah, I wonder, was that Charlie,
Yeah.
Through Giovanni, right? Because Giovanni's my surfing buddy, right? And he and Giovanni worked for him. That's interesting.
Giovanni's. I've seen him on Instagram. He's got an Instagram. I haven't really been in touch with him, but I know he's around.
His father just passed away like a month and a half ago in
Oh
a
man.
fucking motorcycle accident. Just like,
Oh, shoot. That's
but
horrible.
I got to surf in with him not too long ago. He's a class act. He's a sweet human being. So that's interesting that chiropractic kind of grabbed your attention, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and I just remember the feeling in academia for me at the time was, wow, these people are not they're asking the right questions, and the questions that I'm bringing up, and some of this other information that I'm coming upon through doing my own research is leading me to think that this is just such a small view of reality that these so-called experts are really looking at, and I mean that was my experience all throughout academia in general, so I can relate to not being, completely enraptured or sucked into the academic world, even though you're going to university, you're getting a degree. It's I think you got a good bullshit meter. Maybe like if you have a good bullshit detector, it's hard to just dive into a pool of it and say that it's crystal clear water. It's just kind of like, man, this smells, it's all goopy.
I feel you. I feel you. I really, really struggle with that. And I have to listen to motivational videos and there's a clinical psychologist who's gotten a lot of uh, public acclaim named Jordan Peterson. He's a real good guy that I find to listen to because he's got that positive message and he's kind of an antithesis to the, university alt left that says, any ascension of the white male is tyranny and should be fought at all costs. And it's like, well, am I a bad guy? Like, who do I need to pay to be able to play the game? And so
Yeah,
for
well,
me,
we went to Santa Cruz, so you and I saw. Remember the Occupy movement? They started.
yeah, yeah,
It's kind of started in Berkeley, Santa Cruz, and I really starkly remember that. These kids were all on the streets. They were all in the occupying this building, talking about how they want free school, how they want this to be free, and it just seems so silly to me. It's like who's gonna? You just want a worthless? You want everybody to have a free, worthless education? What is the to me it's the major social movements that like our generation has grown up with. They're just in general are completely delusional, and I think that's a it's hard to jump into them wholeheartedly when you feel that and you see it. And yeah, 'cause, I mean ultimately we want what's real, we want what's good, we want the truth.
right. And that's a too often commodified item, isn't it? I mean, like I really struggle with that because I couldn't agree more. I think finding what's true, finding what's real is often a very deep impulse that I have because I like my body will will reject something where I feel like my behavior pattern or my ability to express myself is being restricted, because then I'm just like, well, fuck, like, the walls are closing in, so to speak. And then I know that I can get the other feeling, the feeling that is a healing antithesis to that when I go to the water, when I go to the mountains, because the rules they're still rules, right? I mean, they're still rules, but they're cosmic rules. They're like, don't go too fast so that it's dangerous. Don't hit something at a high speed, right? Like it's simple shit.
We're meant to be connected to our bodies too. When you think about what is the normal common career path for a child in our generation was you go to preschool, right? If you go to a good preschool and it's like a private preschool if your parents can afford it, and basically your mom's got to work, your dad's got to work. They're probably divorced. There's like a 90% chance that your parents are divorced if you're a millennial. And then you go to elementary school, middle school, high school, and then right when you're out of high school, you go directly into the university and you're supposed to know what you want to do. You're sitting down all day in all of these classes from the time you're a child to the time you're a young adult. You're not moving your body. You're not engaged with it. Right. Maybe you're getting like 3 to 4 hours of athletic activity a week if you're, on a baseball team or a soccer team. But a lot of that's also connected with school. So you're always at the school. You're always in this same environment. And it's kind of it's a monoculture. It's like monocropping humans.
That's well put. I have an overarching theory that I think is that you're articulating quite well, and I haven't been able to flesh it out. I've tried to talk to like my dad about it, but because he's one of the most kind of, at his best logically, bounded person, but it still, I think, appeals to his want to be like, everything's okay. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm not coming from a place of like dispossession or feeling like I need to be saved. I just have this theory, and it's exactly kind of what you're articulating. I feel like you have two main concepts that I think people are quite aware of, but I feel like they're causally linked. I really do. And you've got, on the one hand, the opiate epidemic, a huge uptick in young people's mental illness, mental health difficulties. I mean, any pediatrician, any psychiatrist will tell you that they're prescribing huge amounts of drugs to young people in the United States, and probably in the first world everywhere. But I would
Dude, and they're
more so,
self-medicating too. I never got
right,
these things prescribed to me,
right,
but like I always was able to get these type of things in high
right.
school, college. They were always around. Everyone had them.
Right, right. So there's this disease of soul that we have, I feel, for the most vulnerable, for the people that don't have a voice to say, well, I don't want to go sit in a chair for 8 hours. Can't I play? Can't I go learn how to woodwork? Can't I go and sing? Like, aren't there other things? No. What are you talking about? You know? So I feel like that there's that thing that we can articulate quite well, and it's like a national emergency. Everybody's quite aware of this, you know, loss of purpose. I've heard it articulated, you know, crisis of purpose that a lot of us have gone through or go through, or Lord knows a lot of people are in the depths of, you know, God bless them. And then on the other side, I feel like there is that, rather on the other hand, there's this thing that's happening that's too often just accepted as if we're an ant colony and this is our queen. And that, I feel, is the movement towards mechanization in you know, manufacturing, distribution, the movement towards AI in all of the, you know, software systems that govern the largest corporate entities, right? We're systemizing our entire economy, right? And that there's something great to be said for that. I mean, hey, efficiency is great, but you know, these real prophetic guys like Elon Musk and stuff, say what you will about him, are sounding the alarm about this stuff. So it's not coming from a couple crazy people. It's coming from people with a fairly large swath of information, you know, to pull from. And I would argue, and I'm not super educated on the subject. I'm just coming from a place of kind of intuition and heart, because my heart goes out to people, because me personally, Devin, have really struggled with these things, and I've found a way out, if you will. I've found a healing place to stand, but it's semi counterculture, and I struggle with that, because it's like, well, fuck, dude, I'm just as willing to be part of the national, or rather the public discourse, as anybody else. I'm not a shy guy, but I feel that when I say anything that's even slightly anti-progressive capitalism, it's seen as a Luddite, like, oh, you just want to tear it all down. It's like, no, I don't want to tear it all down. I want to, like, take a real honest look at the way that we're moving. And that's why I'm interested to speak with you and other individuals that are passionate and have a perspective that they're willing to, you know, educate themselves on and test against other people and try to make it clear what is really going on. Because I don't know, I see these things happening, and I think the environmental, you know, situation is a part of this whole evolution. And man, I don't really have an answer, you know?
Yeah, no, you're asking, like, I think you're asking the right questions. I mean, this is the question that everybody is asking inside always, because we all feel that something is wrong. We all feel that this is not perfect. And we all have this desire to make things right. We have this desire to rearrange the reality and to bring it into harmony with what is the question, right? So like the mainstream view is that, oh, this is all the natural evolution of humanity, that we came from pond scum, and then the pond scum became conscious and suddenly became animals somehow. And then after rocks turned into animals, with insert miracle here, then we branched off and differentiated in all these different species because natural selection. So I mean, and I'm very critical of Darwinism and natural selection and all these worldviews, because they all have the same metaphysical presuppositions, and they're all built upon materialism. So it's like, whether you're all right, so you being somebody, like, obviously you're not like some rabid communist or something like that, but you're questioning the mainstream, and you called it progressive capitalist. I think it's a really interesting term, right? Because when you look at the fake left right, you have the right, like kind of right, or even like these alt-right people, and they're like very critical of the left, and then the further left gets like full-on communist. The alt-right gets into like ethno-nationalism and stuff like that, and these ideas are getting thrown around on both sides, but most of them actually adhere to the same dogma anyways. They all believe in evolution, they all believe in Darwinian evolution, and they all believe in materialism. And a really good book that I think you would like, it's this book. It's called Nihilism. The Root of the Revolution of the Modern Age. And that's
down.
by, yeah, so this is The Root of the Revolution of the Modern Age, Nihilism, by Father Seraphim Rose. He's an Orthodox Christian. Is he a priest? He was a anyway. Father Seraphim Rose has some really, really good books, but he breaks down kind of the issues with the nihilist dialectic, he calls it, where it's essentially we have a loss of meaning. You mentioned like Jordan Peterson, and he kind of touches on this in some of the book. We got a loss of meaning in our world. We've had God removed from under us, and society now believes in we're going to evolve into becoming our own God, or we're going to make our own gods out of AI, and those AI gods are going to run everything and automatize everything and make it this perfect utopia. And you have all these different brands and flavors of utopian, projecting, planning, and dreaming, like these utopian aspirations. But most of them are actually fundamentally flawed. Like we're starting from the assumption of something that is a very, very false assumption, and that's nihilism. That's that there is no objective truth. That truth is just we come together and we agree on there being a truth, and that it's all just subjective. And then we start from that point, and it just becomes this kind of just a really big, confusing search for power. Like all these different groups struggling for power, and on the left you have everything comes down to power in their worldview, right? It all comes down to domination of other groups, and some groups are in power and some groups are not in power, and they have this like liberation theology, ideology about liberating ourselves from the evil capitalist system. And then on the other hand you have laissez-faire, we've got to just let the free market reign. The free market's going to take care of all this, and both sides miss it. Both sides are missing something major. And really what it comes down to, I think, is we've all got what I sometimes call a God-shaped hole inside of us. We all want something. Yeah, like we want something outside of this, and we need something outside of our own perception, outside of our own selves, our own mind, to justify there being any truth outside of us. So we've had an objective truth destroyed in our worldviews, a lot of us, and we've been raised basically believing contradictory things, believing that that we came from monkeys and that we're just animals, and that behaviorism is the way that you create the utopia. When you look at the people who are bringing in the AI revolution, who are bringing in automation rather, who've been writing about this for like the last 100, 200 years, even more, some of them, going back in the British Royal Society, kind of through like the elite circles of the Anglo-American establishment. You have a lot of people who are very utopian in their thought, who buy into the idea of evolution, Darwinism, and of, basically us going from pond scum to shrews to eventually monkeys to humans, and then now we're going to become transhumanist gods, and we're going to upload our consciousness into silicon form, and we're going to meld with infinite AI and control all of reality and control all physical resources and live forever. It's a very delusional worldview. And I think that's like, if we accept that, then it sets us up for madness. But also fighting against that, we've kind of, as a society, we don't have much to fall back on other than that. Like, what do we have other than, the good old American way, the dollar, put some elbow grease into it. Hey, maybe you can become Bill Gates. Maybe you can make the next Facebook, even though Facebook was started with like several $100 million of seed money from
Winklevoss.
Yeah, In-Q-Tel, which is Peter Thiel, angel investors that come straight out of DARPA and the military-industrial complex. So it's not the free market idea is kind of BS, but also this whole like we're going to be liberated by this liberation theology that kind of becomes this Luciferian kind of struggle for freedom and creating your own order out of this chaos. It's perceived chaos, right? But I think that when we I'm going off on all sorts of tangents.
No,
here,
I'm with you. I want to give you a chance to get the whole thought out. I mean, there's a couple of places I'd interject, but nothing with real content, other just little anecdotes. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe I'll just throw the mic over to you and you can direct it from here, because I don't know where I would take it. There's a million different ways I can go.
Right. I think that, so you're talking about kind of the two ways that we can miss the mark, so to speak, the divine mark, if you will. And I couldn't agree more. And I've heard it, articulated again by Jordan Peterson. I'm a fan of his. among some other good thinkers and talkers, and he talks about, the pitfall of nihilism. So it's like, if we're not focused on the great mystery, if you will, then we can fall into nihilism. There is no point. But we can also fall off the other side into like a materialistic totalitarianism. Like, I know everything that's important. I have the things that create, meaning, and I'm going to use them to fucking destroy the people that would go against, the correct.
That's ultimately a nihilistic worldview too. Like, that's ultimately like you become your own authority, right? You become the arbiter of truth and the cutting knife, the cutting edge, rather than coming in alignment with divine will, with the will of God, right? And having, something outside of ourselves to justify that truth. It's more like I get what you're saying. There's that totalitarian worldview, but nihilism is a totalitarian worldview.
Sure.
Nihilism,
right.
Yeah.
I hear you. I guess the distinction for me is where we stand on materialism. So, and listen, I'm shooting for the middle as well. So I'm not arguing for either side. I think it's fair to understand the polarity to try to be balanced in between them. But one way that I've conceptualized it is with relation to the material world, because I think that we're both articulating this fundamental reality that there's a truth outside of the material world. And the people that are the most charismatic, the people that are the most magnetizing, the people that really do end up in positions of honest to goodness power, either they're pathological or they're in touch with that place and that thing, if you will. And
or they're in touch with that place or that thing, but that place or that thing is also dual, and there's evil and there's good at that level as well.
Sure. I buy that.
In my worldview, the where I'm coming from, what I believe is, I've kind of, we haven't really talked about this ever, but I align with Eastern Orthodoxy, and what we believe is that, that there was a fall, right? That we weren't monkeys who became humans who are going to become
I understand.
gods.
Sure.
Mankind fell, and there was a fall, and before the fall, there was a completely different. There was a very, very different reality that we inhabited before the fall, and the reason we see, death, destruction, sin in the world is because of our own choices and because of the fall.
I've heard the same. Let's call it archaeological theory posited by Graham Hancock. Have you read any of him, or have you heard of him or his suppositions? He talks about the evidence for a predominantly shamanistic culture, something like 15,000 years ago, hugely successful, millions and millions and millions and millions of people strong, maybe billions, I couldn't tell you. And that kind of resonates with me, and I think it fits into the picture that you're painting, that at some point in our human history, we kind of got it more right. We kind of were on the correct wavelength, if you will, of things like respect, of things like resonance, and these kinds of woo-woo things that get glazed over in certain crowds, but to me really speaks to me. So I guess what I wanted to say, kind of in the same topic of, the two far outer reaches that tend to be illogical in a certain level of analysis, and then how I conceptualize that center point. And I was going to say something earlier to the effect of understanding that the Eastern philosophies, the Eastern religious, although Buddhism isn't really a religion, but like the Eastern pursuits, the Eastern thought process gets something right that is really integral to the conversation that we're having. And I definitely am pulled in that direction as well. I'm not like compelled to walk in that direction. In a very different way, I see it and it pulls me in that direction. And in my life, when I've kind of answered that call or allowed that call to animate me, I've had really wonderful experiences. I end up having really, really magical things happen in my life. And I'm one to be just as much of a cynic as the next guy. So that's why I try to hold up these things against, rigorous truth. And I do, and it still holds up. I've had books and people and experiences come into my life when I've been looking in the distance to that thing that feels like humanity, as opposed to something that I've been given that's sterile and scrubbed down. And so for me, it's like getting away from the thinking that nothing has meaning, thinking that computers are a waste of time and everything's shit, and a materialistic nihilism, like I'm going to go live on a hill, and also getting away from computers and systems are the only thing, because I think that there's a center point where it's like I don't want to have shit. I don't want to have too much stuff. I don't want to be consumer based. I don't want to be I don't want to be a consumer first, but I certainly get that being able to have this conversation with you and reconnect is a beautiful thing. And I'm glad and I'm honored to be able to have that opportunity. And without my fucking MacBook Pro, it would be a little bit more difficult for us to just kind of meditate and try to, astral plane it out, So like, I think that,
there's not really, I'd say it's a false dialectic, right? So it's like, look, the material world does exist, but it doesn't mean everything is material. The material realm reflects the spiritual, and they're both intimately intermeshed, and we're not just a material being, and we're not strictly spiritual. It's like we have a body, we have a soul as well. The body doesn't work without the soul, right? And then there's something very, very special about the body, but the body does not last forever as far as like this manifestation goes. But we have the resurrection, where we believe that in the resurrection all of creation becomes deified, right? And this is kind of one of the differences in Eastern Orthodoxy and then in like a lot of like Protestant and Catholic circles is we've got a lot of these problems that theologically come up when different sects are coming up with different ideas about it. But what we believe is that the body, the physical world, it's not bad. Like we have the passions, we have things that we're drawn to, right? Like we want connection, but that desire for connection can lead us to idolizing our lovers. That desire for connection can lead us to idolizing friends. And then there's a whole system of just corrupting that. And there's an entire system built around celebrity worship, where it's just,
right. That's what I was going to say.
The most base impulses, where we're constantly looking for those idols, and they're provided for people. And then they come with other messages, which kind of fit into the greater cultural zeitgeist. So what I see is it's not like it's this, it's not like it's always being consciously done by human beings, but we do start to get manipulated into these kind of, these cultural cycles that are visible and observable. And there are people who study these cultural cycles for generations, for centuries, and just basically understand that there are ways to move mass consciousness and to manipulate mass consciousness. And I think that's what we're seeing with, devices like the iPhones and, all these things, which are really cool, which we can do cool things with. But at the same time, it's a two-edged sword, right? So there's it's not that these things are bad because matter and physical reality are bad, right? It's not like, oh, the whole world, everything is bad, everything's terrible. It's not how it is, but it's we, through our choices, through our own decision, and through us having the wrong intention, we end up using these tools to destroy ourselves rather than to rectify ourselves. So we use, instead of using our energies in certain ways, we just use them to tear down our own nest instead of building it up, basically.
Well, but it's possible to do the latter. It's possible to build as opposed to destroy. And I think it takes balance, huh? It takes truth. So I was really interested in the, like, I hesitate to say this because it has such a negative connotation, but the occult. And why? Not for any religious purpose, not for any worship, nothing like that. Just for a genuine interest in a intellectual pursuit that is a antithesis to, it's all how can I say, in the light. Well, we know it's not all in the light because we all have our dark places. We all struggle with negativity. That's just the human condition. So I was really interested in that. So I learned enough about it to get something from it that was helpful for me. And what I've seen and what I continue to see as a resounding truth is that there are levels of reality at any one time. Like it's, there's the highest heights of potential and where our energy can go up and navigate. But there's also the underworld. The underworld is a kind of an ever-present thing. And one of the things that the occult teaches a person when they're, courageous enough to learn is that there are ways of navigating the underworld. And the underworld is a place that a person gets sent when their life becomes chaos, right? That God bless that person on the street that's homeless and, has no money. That person's living in the underworld. Well, what operates the underworld? Well, chaos, monsters, symbolism. There's a lot of symbolism. So if you're in a gang, you wear a certain symbol on your back, and that identifies you as being a part of a certain group. You don't, drive a certain car. You don't, do this or that. You elicit elicit is maybe not the right word. You promote a certain symbol. So I found that interesting. Not that I'm, trying to make a home in the underworld, but just that I've been through it in times of depression and trauma in my life. And I've gotten out the other side. And that's been an extraordinarily character building experience for me. You saw me when I was in dark places, to be honest with you. And what I've come to learn is that there's really simple symbolic representations of the way to navigate back to the light, if you will. And these things are things that I would like to give to people. But the thing that I've recognized about myself, as much as I'm, articulate, and I find myself to be able to understand things, fairly well, I can be a blowhard. I can be somebody who is hard to take seriously because I have a hard time shutting up. So I realize that I can only effectively plug myself in when I'm invited. And so I find great joy in being able to have good conversations with people like yourself, Tristan, and I have to find where I'm wanted and needed, because then I can kind of let myself flow. And I've run into brick walls flowing in inappropriate times. But the tools that navigate that dark place of human experience that's not bounded by systems of behavior like protocols in emergency medicine or rules for the office like in the workplace are very simple, and they're symbolically relevant. The truth.
Those places too, though, they are bound by certain rules, and there is a logic to it, and there is, right? So like when you read the occult literature and like these black magicians and stuff, even like these guys like Crowley, I mean, it's like they very specific things that they would do. And, for instance, like the whole Thelema and Crowley, his whole thing was about doing what abhors you the most and just going as deep into it as you can in this kind of dark ecstasy, this like basically butt sex yoga is basically like was the Crowleyan stuff, where he just wanted to do what would disgust him the most, including the most horrendous sexual acts that you could think of, including bestiality, child abuse, like these things that he wrote about in his
I don't know about that.
Yeah, so it's like, but then at the same time, he's kind of this guy that in the mainstream, like the Beatles had him on their album cover. He was very, very influential in the '60s.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Leary believed that he was the reincarnation of Aleister Crowley. So yeah, so it's like, the occult stuff, it's so fascinating, but I think that it might. I'm trying to just point out this one thing that you said. Well, and if we interpret it in a certain way, like the way that you're saying, you didn't like the structure of consensus reality because you saw that there was this veneer of bullshit, right? A lot of it seems arbitrary, and I totally agree with you.
Well, I mean, it depends on what subculture of reality you're in. There's not one overarching narrative that's very rigorous. There's lots of different groups you can.
And they all have sets of rules and stuff to maintain a certain order in their little world, to maintain this whole energy flow going. But there's rules at all those levels, right? There's rules even in the deepest realms of the occult, where it's about contact with spirits and entities. And
well, I was going to say earlier, not to interrupt you, but one of the main things that I wanted to forward with thinking about that place, because it's a real place. You go to an MMA fight, that's not a UFC fight. You're going to see the underworld. You're going to see gangs. You're going to see. I'm dead serious. That's what it is. So to me, I've been interested in those kinds of communities because they're not your white collar communities. And how do you conduct yourself in those communities? Well, it's very simple. You have truth. Number one is truth. You speak the truth. You're honest. If you're honest, you have a sword in your hand. And that sword of honesty can cut through any bullshit. Okay? So you have the sword of honesty. This is something that resonated with me when I was trying to learn and educate myself on how people can be subversive or manipulative, or like, what is that? Well, it's understanding these tools, in my opinion, and truth is
some people, they don't even understand it. They just do it because they're ritualistically recreating what they learned from their parents, who it's like, so there's the aspect of wielding it consciously, and there's psychopaths who's taken a step back and who no longer feel bound by common morality, empathy, and all these things, and then they just start wielding this ruthless nihilist sword. But then there's people who are just like, I feel like the average person, somebody who grew up with maybe like a, like a really screwed up father who was an alcoholic and would beat on him and stuff, and who was like kind of schizo, like they end up doing that and just manipulating people in the same exact way that they saw their father do it, and they don't even know. They're just like, that's how you get love. That's how you get your bowl of cereal, right? Like that's
Right.
how
Right.
you get money. Like that's how they think they do it.
I feel
Crazy.
you. There's a book called The Celestine Prophecy, and that was an introduction to the idea of playing dramatic roles of character to get attention, and that we all learn how to do that at a young age. But then the parable of the two sons who have an alcoholic father. One son goes on to be an alcoholic. One son goes on to never touch alcohol. And you ask both of them why they do what they do, and they say, "Watch my father." Right. So at the end of the day, there is a personal responsibility that is exacted whether a person is conscious of it or not. So you might as well be conscious of it. Right. And so my thing was, okay, I have to tell the truth, period. I have no other recourse, because no matter who I blame or where I've come from, the truth is the sword that cuts. Right. So you got the truth. Then you've got the cup. Right? The cup of Christ, the cup of giving, the cup of charity, the cup of brotherhood, the cup that is passed, that is where we all can sit at the same table, right? So you have the sword of truth and the cup of shared, life force, right? So that's a really powerful symbol, and it makes sense, right? Like
you could change that to the menstrual cup, the moon cup, because
there you
it's
go.
like
Sure.
life force.
Well, it's rhythmic. It's monthly.
Yeah.
It represents the harvest. It represents the flow of the tides. Sure, why not? So you've got the cup. Then you've also got the shield of compassion, of kindness, of respect. If you're respectful and you tell the truth and you're in the world's worst company, they're not going to fuck with you. Why would they? You feel me? So there are these underarching, not overarching, underarching, foundation level virtues. And I agree. I think that to touch on something you said earlier, there are people that become maniacal or fanatical or just pathological in how they utilize those things. You listen to a salesperson, they're just going to tell you bullshit. And I just don't ever want to be that kind of person. So I'm really intrigued by these things. And, but
the underworld, the concept of the underworld, it's not just, all right. So you mentioned like MMA, that's not UFC. Like that could be
right.
Underworld. It's like, that's more of the,
well, I just went to a fight. That's why I said that. It was interesting.
Yeah. That's like black eye, blue collars. Right. But
right.
then there's also
right.
the underworld. The underworld also permeates the highest levels of high society as well.
That's
so
right.
I mean, you see child trafficking, traumatic ritual abuse, these are the dark underbelly of humanity. It's at every level,
it's everywhere. Yes, sir.
Society, and the people at the lower end, like who are, the weirdo trailer park dudes who are just kind of pawns for whoever comes along and understands how to use them in their games. Then there's also, the heads of corporations who maybe have certain tastes that are certain obsessions, certain tastes, and certain inclinations that are not accepted or deemed to be morally wrong, and they can be manipulated using that. So there are things at every level of society that are.
It's a good point. Yeah, it's not one.
Like
I'm sorry.
Human. Yeah,
yes, sir. Human. That's right. So I think we all are influenced by that part of humanity.
Like, what is that? That's the question. Like, what is that? What is that darkness?
Symbolism. It's symbolism. It's that lower brain. It's, in my opinion, it's the lack of rational discourse internally in reacting to the environment. It's understanding, good and bad at a very, very, very low primal, instinctual level. And it's a thing that we are not very good at integrating as a society into the larger narrative. It's just, we don't even talk about it, and Eastern people do. Like my dad remarried a lady from Thailand. So I've spent some time with Thailand, Thai people, and they have those things integrated into their culture. Their language is tonal. So they speak in a way that is consistent with the meaning of their words. In English, we don't do that. We use sarcasm. We use all this kinds of, this shit that is subversive, where you can't do that in Thai. You can't say a word, that means something two different ways, or literally is the other word. They take very seriously how they bow to one another. It's always based on age. Sex is less of an issue. than is age. So you don't call somebody he or she or sir or ma'am, you call them older or younger. So like, I feel like there are cultures that are long-standing cultures, no matter, you know, what turmoil they've been through, and you know, and to what degree they've been erased, you know, tragically as it is, right? But that still uphold some of those fundamental truths, as you touched on, where, you know, we kind of might have had it right 15,000 years ago. I think that's a very interesting idea, because I think there's still a lot of our people in today's day and age that feel that way, that say, well, hold on, like I can conduct myself consistent with these truths, and boom, stuff starts working very well for me. So there must be some.
But these cultures,
You know?
like, I mean, Thai culture, and in a lot of the East, I mean, you know, China, India, it's not like these places are free of suffering, sin, and, you know, degeneracy either, right? It's like, yeah, there's certain cultural mores, and there's certain things about them that may be superior to what we see in the West right now. But at the same time, there's still all the same issues that we deal with.
Right.
So to me, it seems to me like the problem goes much deeper than that.
Right.
I
Right.
think
Right. I hear you.
properly identify what the issue is, and properly, I mean, it all comes down to the worldview. It all comes down to where we believe we come from, and the meaning that we give this reality. So if we believe that it's just a simulation, and it's just like a video game, it's like, all right, you know, I got one life to live, dog, YOLO, but maybe I'll jump on that mushroom and I'll get another one, and I'll jump down the sewer and beat Bowser, and I'll have
There you
two.
go.
It's like, you know, so that's like one view of reality, but you know, that's going to inform the way you act. Like if you think also that you're constantly you're going to reincarnate, and that we're like, that matter is this constant evolution of matter, that the world is just this constant evolution of matter consuming itself and becoming different forms and manifesting different myriad forms, then that'll inform the way we behave too. Just like, you know, if you believe that we were made in the image and likeness of God, and that we fell from an incorruptible state. Bye-bye. That we fell from nice. Bye, Mom. I met your mom a few times, man.
Yeah.
I remember.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just thinking about your dog Jade.
Yeah, she was a sweetie pie. Dude, she had 2 strokes before she passed away. She passed away at 15. My mom got another pit bull named Dusty, who's a very sweet doggy. She has to get surgery on her legs. She's still around.
How old's Dusty?
She's probably 5 or 6.
Wow.
She's a sweetheart. Yeah, she's in Monterey with Jim, my mom's husband. So she's going back there. Yeah.
You remember Duke?
I remember Duke. Is Duke around?
You just missed him. He died last year.
Oh, yeah, I remember Duke as a little puppy.
Yeah, he used to play with what was your dog's name?
Jade.
Jade. No, the retriever.
Oh, Maverick.
Maverick. Yeah.
Yep. Sarah had Maverick and BB, the little black dog that I took up to the waterfall one time, and she slipped and fell in the water, and then ever after that she'd never touched the water. She would like climb a sheer rock cliff before she'd like wade into the water. She's terrified of the water. I was like, I didn't know that dogs have such ingrained memory systems, but it was really interesting. She had that one experience, and boom, she wouldn't touch the water ever again.
Duke had he got swept away by a wave at the dog beach in Santa Cruz.
Oh, no.
What's that beach called?
I know the one. I know the one you're talking about. It's like It's like right next to something Cove, Mitchell's Cove area, right? 4 natural bridges.
Yeah, exactly. He got smacked by a wave, and after that, he was just over it. Didn't want to go in the water.
Oh, I was there one time, and a whale came by, humpback whale. No bullshit, like less than 50 feet from the sand. Everybody on the beach just went. Like, it was mesmerizing. It was unbelievably awesome. They like the grace with which whales and you know, all cetaceans move through the water. Like, I feel it in my chest. Are you leaving right now? Okay, hold on. Let me say goodbye to my mom. So give me just one more. You remember Tristan from Santa Cruz?
Yeah.
Here he is. Say hi.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
You look great.
You too.
What a cool setup you have. What a cool setup.
Thanks. I was just telling Devin that I was just.
Oh, you're in Ecuador. Well, nah. How cool.
Are you around?
I'm sorry.
It was just really nice to see you. Devin and I were just talking. We were reminiscing about Jade, your old dog. I love that dog.
The best. I know. I miss her so much. I have a new one, and she's A little bit of a tard.
No, she's not. No, she's
No,
not.
she's a weirdo. She'll just look at you, just like, okay, now what are you going to do? No expression at all. Very different.
She doesn't think Dusty is as expressive as Jade, but that's not true. All right, well,
Okay,
I love you.
Love you too.
I'll see you. Drive safe, okay?
Yep, I will.
So we had the whole family over here for Father's Day. So my mother, her brother and sister, my cousin, my brother, his wife, and my nephew, we all got together. Oh man, the energy flows when you get the whole clan together, dude. My back was in spasm last night. I was in a lot of pain. Like, to speak to how important balance is, like I heard a funny quote one time, and it's like, if you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family. It's like, fuck.
Back 15 years old, right? Everyone's
straight up, dude. Everybody knows all of the pitfalls of my character. Everybody knows exactly the buttons to push.
Just be like, hey, Devin, you remember this?
Yeah, straight up, dude. I think I've got all of these, ascended ideas, and then I just feel like I'm struggling for attention when I was, 9 again. Yeah, it's funny. And so, I was going to say earlier, and I think there's truth to it, and it certainly is a challenging truth for me to embody, and that is the way to bolster oneself against the corrosive influences of dogmatism, of buying into an ideology, no matter how potentially good it is. You highlighted even the Eastern side has terrible pitfalls. Is from a foundation of the self and the family, like from a place of community, from a circle. Like a circle is a super important symbol. And why is a circle a super important symbol? It has no edges, and it goes around and fucking around. It never stops going around, right? And so one metaphor, one symbol that's been recurring to me in helping my grandparents, and caretaking for them, because that's what my wife and I are doing professionally right now. I'm trying to educate myself and working to become a paramedic. Is that the circle is the healing influence in negative emotional environments. And why is it? Well, everybody sits at the table. Everybody has a seat at the table. The Knights of the Round Table, the whatever. It's a recurring symbol, I'm sure. Well, if any negative impulse comes into the circle, it quickly dissipates because it has to go around the whole circle, or it starts like star patterning from person to person. So what I've recognized is, if there's any bad feelings, no matter the stress level, no matter who's coming at who's the bad guy or the bad person one day, or who fucked up, whatever, as long as everybody has a seat at the table and everybody has the opportunity to have their thoughts and feelings shared, and thirdly, that nobody's thoughts or feelings are more important than anybody else's thoughts or feelings, then the good things start to rise and the bad things dissipate. And I can't really articulate why that occurs, but I find that to be true. And I'm no better arbiter of goodness than anybody else. What I feel that I have the potential is an arbiter for like holding the circle together. It's like, no, the circle is the important thing. I'm not the important thing. The continuity of the healing nature of the family is the important thing. So how can we ensure that everybody feels that they have a seat, and so that's an interesting thing that I've found too, and like weirdly it'll manifest like in social circumstances. You ever notice how if you get two people together, they're going to usually go face to face, or they'll go shoulder to shoulder, right? That there's a kind of a symbolic representation of either they're working something out, or they're facing a shared adversity together. Then three people, it's always a triangle, right? And if it's not a triangle, if any two are closer than the third, then that third's slowly being ostracized, right? In just body language, And then if there's four, it should be a cross, right, or a square. And if not, there's kind of a push and pull. And I just think that that's this interesting organizing principle that is the representation of divinity. I think that it's ever present in the sense that it organizes people, and it organizes people into families. It organizes people into groups that are like-minded. It organizes people into groups of people that have a shared endeavor. You know, if you're into martial arts or something, you go to your studio, and that's a sanctified place, right? We bow on before we go onto the mat. We bow before you get off the mat. That's just how martial arts is done, right? There's a master. I feel that one of the culturally corrosive things to the like normalcy of divinity is money, is this idea of power. And I think the right and left have, you know, politically in this country have very different narratives on what that is, but they both kind of agree that it's not a good thing. Like the right says, well, if you're insider trading and you're a monopoly and you're, you know, fucking up the free market, you're doing it wrong. But the left says, well, any crazy, you know, hierarchy of power is just people using, you know, this organizing structure, you know, in a negative way. Well, I see these organizing structures on the levels that I, you know, navigate. And it's very difficult for me to be able to at once occupy a place in what I feel like is a divine order, and at the same time uphold that divine order against, you know, challenge, because I don't know why, but I definitely feel that. And I find that to be very, very interesting.
Yeah. Hey, 1 second. I'm here. My wife's phone.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Sorry about that, man.
No problem.
Headphones back. All right. I'm back. Can you hear me?
I can. I had an anecdote to share with you that I thought was interesting to an earlier discussion we were having. You were highlighting how some of the people at the highest heights of, you know, the American aristocracy are these real despicable people with their conduct, right? Like you're saying, the underworld can reach even to the highest heights, and I'm sure there's truth.
You know, like mafia. I mean, everybody knows about the mafia. Very,
Right.
very high society,
Sure.
high crime.
Sure.
High level.
So I heard recently that Rene Descartes, we've all heard his name in school, right? That he was like one of the founders of rationalism. He was one of like the Renaissance age thinkers, and you know, all this. He was, you know, je pense donc je suis. I think therefore I am. I just heard from somebody who is more educated on him than I am, that he used to fucking like torture dogs, murder dogs with the implicit like with I don't know if that's the right word.
For science, bro. It's for science, dude.
Yeah,
He's trying to.
Yeah. Well, he meant to try to he meant to posit and disprove the idea that there is a soul. And I'm like, what
torture
the
dog.
fuck? So, you know, I guess that is just a
He wants to prove stuff. He wants to disprove the existence of the soul, which he categorically disproves the ability to disprove the existence of the soul, because the soul is non-physical, yet he says all reality is physical. Right. So it's circular. It's circular logic. All reality is physical, therefore the soul cannot exist, because nothing that is non-physical exists, because I declare it, because I can declare all reality to be physical. And then so proceeds Western rationalist, materialist thought for the next several hundred years. And even those ideas, the ideas of materialism, Darwinism, and rationalism do have their roots in esoteric orders as well. I mean, Freemasonry, you know, you read like Manly P. Hall, or even going back to like Francis Bacon, and a lot of these guys that have been talking about the important. Manly P. Hall is a Masonic historian and philosopher who wrote this book, like The Secret Teachings of All Ages and other stuff. And but yeah, the roots of this revolution that we see happening right now, the whole like global nihilist revolution, which is an extension of the communist revolution, which is an extension, you know, of the French Revolution. They say it's an extension of every revolution that we've seen in the modern age. Huxley says that it's the ultimate revolution, this whole AI, transhumanist, you know, solid state economy where everything is controlled centrally by dictocrats and technocrats who program AI and get people to worship this, algorithms basically that they've personified with even the word AI, right? They're telling you it's artificial intelligence. No, it's a bunch of algorithms that are that are able to predict things that will happen within a closed loop cybernetic system. And as long as you keep everybody feeding information into the system, it's able to, control the behavior of those organisms through just through basic behaviorism. And
Right.
but the root of that goes back also, you mentioned the occult, it does go back to certain occult orders. Pythagoras was kind of like one of these early philosophers among the Greeks, and he talked about technocracy and controlling people through behaviorism, and the need for actually even using diet as a tool. So a lot of these people, a lot of these ideas go back far deeper into history than most of us have looked at. And it's not like this is anything new. The fourth industrial revolution, automation. I mean, people have been talking about this for hundreds of years, and this is something that I've been looking at a lot lately. Something that I definitely think about a lot, especially since I use social media to reach out, to run my business. Seeing how it's changed culture, seeing how it's changed the very fabric of our reality since 2005, 2006, 7, 8, when Facebook really started getting mainstream. It's really crazy, and it's really amazing how these tools are so powerful at disseminating culture and at spreading culture. But depending on our worldview and what we believe about what is right and wrong and good and bad, some people think that this is progressive, like that this is, we're progressing towards this great global society. But I don't know. I tend to think that we're regressing with a lot of these things. We're in many ways, falling further away from connection with our friends and family, with like real connection with people, as we, just sit and scroll through Facebook and like get dopamine hits from likes, likes and shares, basically snorting lines of likes all day rather than really connecting with each other. So it's, these tools are so interesting. I don't know. Oh, you were talking about Descartes and materialism. This is the logical extension of that, right? Having, cybernetic devices that control our dopamine feedback responses constantly and tie us into a greater hive mind of a global culture that is being, programmed via imagery, via symbols, via
Right.
Language through these devices. So this right here is these are magical devices. These are magical devices for the spread of occult power, which people invite into their lives. We invite into our lives, barely even understanding the Faustian bargain that often goes on with this stuff. And but these all take place at a more subtle level than most of us are looking at, that most of us are willing to engage with. And yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring up the the occult stuff, and because I remember you told me about that you had like read a little bit about Crowley back in Santa Cruz when we lived there. Like I'm remembering a conversation we had way back when I was talking about something to do with the occult, and you mentioned like, oh yeah, no, Crowley, he was a mountaineer, and
He was a mountaineer. Yeah. He was on some early Himalaya. I mean, I can't speak for the guy's soul. I just know anecdotes of his achievements. But he well, first of all, he just to speak to that, he is supposedly Harold. Oh, what's up, little dude? Hey, bud.
That's Devin. Can you hear him?
Hey, my man. How are you?
He's never had headphones on.
Aw.
Devin. I've known Devin longer than I've known you, dude. Isn't that crazy?
You're all right. You having fun? You playing with the doggies?
You playing with dogs? What are you doing?
No.
No? What are you doing? You're silly. You want to just hang out with me? I'm going to talk to Devin. You won't be able to hear him. Is that okay? Or you can go get mama.
Can you do that?
You go get mommy? Yeah, go get mama. Go tell mama I'm almost done. A little bit more time. Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Bye, Ryder. Later, buddy.
Wow, that's Ryder.
Yeah.
That's how long ago that conversation that we had.
I know, right?
Jeez.
But how long ago was the conversation when you were like, yeah, Crowley's a mountaineer, and I still remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Weird
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
like it's all there, but we just pull it up when we need it.
Right. Yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. I'm super proud of you. First and foremost, I'm interested in, you know, the way in which you've been able to bless you, to create something that you believe in, something that you're obviously passionate about. You know, you've gotten on to something that's really valuable, which is obviously good clean eating, and a new way of conducting yourself, you know, from the Santa Cruz days, if you will. And I really honor that. And I have no place in it other than one that you would invite me to, but I wanted to connect with you and tell you that I think that that's really honorable and really wonderful. And that's a powerful thing that you're doing. And I just say more power to you, you know, and what can I say, man? One of these days we'll have to link up, whether in Ecuador or the States, and we'll get in the water or do something fun.
Yeah, you know, I got to get to. I haven't been in the U.S. since 2011. 2011 was the last time I was in the U.S. But this next year, I might be doing some traveling for some conferences and stuff.
Okay.
So if I do make my way through Northern California, I'll definitely let you know, man. And you know, I mean, it's crazy to me how long it's been, but it doesn't feel like it's really been that long, does it? It kind of feels like it's yesterday.
Life doesn't change, huh? I mean, it's just, I don't know. That's a stupid thing to say because it's so trite, but like, you're my friend. Like, I'll be your friend for as long as, you know, you want, you know what I'm saying? Like, nothing, you know. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to get older. I mean, shoot, there's a lot to be said. You've got a beautiful family. You've built a home, you know. I mean, I don't know if you physically built the house, but you've built a place for your family. That's really special, dude.
The house we live in now, this one's not ours, but we're building one.
Are you really?
Yeah, we're building one to go to live in that'll be ours. I'm not building it with my hands, but you know, we designed it, and it's the floors are getting put in this week, so that's pretty cool.
That's wonderful. I saw you in your garden, just so excited about all the things that you're planting and harvesting. How cool is that? Yeah, man, I just honor the fact that you're telling your truth, that you're building something that you believe in. And, I just want you to know that there's a lot of, you know, brothers and sisters out here, if you will, that will cheer for you.
Right on, man. Well, I appreciate it. We, I don't know. I mean, we've been kind of on this little road, I don't know, since Santa Cruz, basically, and just trying to get healthy and, you know, promote something that's good and wholesome and a healthy lifestyle. And, you know, I mean, if we do want to change things, it starts with us. And the foods we eat, the way we fuel our body, these really affect us at a basic physiological level. I know something that you really like to talk about, mental health, right? Psychological health. This is something that's of utmost importance. And most people just bypass it. If your body's not functioning well, the psychology is not going to function well either, right? The gut and the brain are intimately interconnected. And, you know, for us to have a functioning brain, we've got to have a functioning body. So it's, there's a lot of people out there, you know, me included in the past, who just, you know, don't understand how to feed ourselves, don't understand the importance of good quality food. And this is something that does reflect out into the greater, you know, ripples out in the bigger pond also, because they're, you know, the choices we make economically, like supporting local agriculture, supporting animal husbandry, getting involved in the production of our own food. These things all affect these all affect things profoundly, and we're being marketed all these junk foods, all Taco Bell and stuff, and Burger King, and you know, we're being marketed a bunch of trash, which, you know, is meant to perpetuate a feedback loop of you know, unhealth, both physical and mental and cultural, and that makes us profitable. So, you know, it's not the most profitable business to be in, but it's something that it feels profitable for the soul, if you will, because it's you know, we're all about what's true. We're all about what's real. And we really, we want people to be well. We want people to be healthy. We want people to be happy. And there's not, it's unfortunate that we were raised without much knowledge of how to feed ourselves and what the body really needs. I mean, unless you were like an athlete and you were, you know, very few of us probably receive proper education on how to nourish the body and how to keep it functioning in top condition. And it's I know it's crazy. I'm 32, which is not like old or anything, but I definitely feel better now, feel in better shape in every way than when I was, 18 to 25. And that's cool. It's nice to know that the body can recover from all the abuse and the laziness and the things that we threw at it and in it and on it. And yeah, so that's kind of our mission now. We want to help people to eat well, to live well. And we really are all about family, community, and, just kind of, building from there, because if we're not able to have cohesive families, cohesive real communities in the real world, we're not going to be able to keep out some of this, degeneracy and nonsense that we see kind of pushing and pushing and pushing at an ever increasing pace into our daily lives as, social media accelerates the dissemination of information, propaganda, and, cultural nudges to get us moving in a certain direction. Because that's really what we're seeing in a lot. The economy, people gauge they gauge everything by like economics, and I don't think it just comes down to that. There are definitely more subtle layers of it, and it's way deeper than that. But at just the economic level, there is a lot of money and energy being pushed into distracting and confusing us. And that's always been the case, at least since we were young kids, when television was only 12 channels and there was it was all owned by a few companies. It's a similar situation now, but a little bit more different, a little bit more complex, but same basic core thing. And,
okay, so yes, sir. I got a point to make because I know you got to go pretty quick. Yeah, you're.
I got time, man. I got time.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to articulate one thing that I got a couple different threads to tie into. So you're talking about the fucking almighty dollar, right? And I mean we've talked about that in this culture for a long time, and everybody recognizes that it's meaningless and it's a means to an end, and it's just it's shitty to follow dollars, right? And that somehow when people don't do that, they're able to be more successful even monetarily, right? And you're talking
to a certain extent, because there's things, you just reject having to provide economically, then I don't know. I mean, you mentioned bums in the street earlier. So,
I mean, like, listen to Bezos, richest man in the world. He would have told you in one speech, he goes, we think about the customer. We're always thinking about the customer's needs. We're always anticipating. Like, there's a way to become financially successcular where you're not thinking about the money, and I think that can be more wholesome. But what I'm interested in is,
what if your customer, just to play,
go ahead
out there. But what if your customers' urges and needs are being nudged in a direction constantly to try to seek comfort, because the customer is looking for comfort and satisfaction because they're being constantly advertised to in this culture, and basically smacked into a place of insecurity, unsureness, and depression, because that's a marketable state, because you could be sold stuff. So you're trying to satisfy your customer, but your customer is also being formed by your propaganda, right? So the average customer from Amazon is asking for automation because the average customer from Amazon is constantly being agitated and is in a constant state of need and desire, right? So it's just a funny thing. I'm not saying that that it's all bad, but I think I'm just pointing at the more subtle aspects of our desires that get hijacked, right? So the customer is demanding ease, is demanding comfort, but ultimately ease and comfort lead to degeneration. They lead to sloth. They lead to stagnation. Right. So it's a very that probably has nothing to do with the point you were going to make.
No, it does. It does. I think the fair point to be made is that there's no quantifying the strength of the human spirit. You've seen in your own life that when you started giving it the right fuel, your body transformed. I've watched you build a beautiful family around yourself through nothing but your own will. I've certainly seen heroic stories in my own experience. The thing that I see as being the redeeming quality in the face of all of this, to quote the desiderata, aridity and disenchantment, is that there is heroism and there is divinity and there is beauty, no matter how hijacked our minds are. Trance is real, right? You can lull somebody into trance. People can get hypnotized. Like that shit, whether or not it's woo-woo. Yes, sir. Whether or not it's woo woo at a certain level, it's true to say, if a person's in a certain peer group, that person's going to kind of mold to that peer group. Well, the thing that I see is
peer groups self-regulate and maintain a
Yes, sir.
certain trance state. It's about maintaining certain trance states in people. It's
Yes,
about
sir.
maintaining certain hypnotic states.
Sure.
And that's what occult initiations are about as well.
Right, right. And so what I see as the redeeming quality in the face of all, base inspiration or evil manipulations is that there is a hero's journey and that we're all on it. And any great thinker, in my opinion, worth their salt, has talked about it. And the thing that I find fascinating is when I look at every major successful, with a few exceptions, majorly successful, I hesitate to say Hollywood, but let's say fantasy story is an iteration, is a representation of the same ascension of the divine individual. Like, that's the thing that the Western culture gets right, is that there is a divine individual. Sure, Eastern talks about our fitting into the larger flow and community and nature and all this being of the highest importance. But the Western paradigm, right, is you are sovereign. You are sanctified. You have the capacity to make your own decisions. You have to answer for them, but you still have this divinity inside of yourself, and it should be respected. And we can all ceremonially acknowledge that through the cup of Christ and eating the bread of Christ and all that shit. And we can talk about that's beside the point. What I'm talking about in the fact where I see it represented in popular culture gives me great hope for humanity. Because like the terminus of the argument that we're having is like, or the discussion I should say, because it's a fun discussion and neither of us are adversarial, is, are we going to like a WALL-E, if you ever saw that movie WALL-E, state of affairs, where people are just 500 pounds in automated wheelchairs, just having screens in front of them using credits to take shit into their body? Are we going to like an idiocracy place, or are we going towards some kind of revolution of the soul? And I feel like that is just as possible and probable. And the reason is, you look at Lord of the Rings, you look at Star Wars, you look at Aladdin, you look at all of these great stories that millions and millions and millions and millions of us are admitted fans, certainly myself. And you start peeling away the representative layers, and they're all the same story. The person goes into the darkness, the underworld, the place of chaos, place that necessitates a contention with the greatest evil, a place of no orientation, a place of utter hopelessness, but with one redeeming hope. That person comes back from that place, traverses through the place of nihilism, of materialism, of hopelessness, of the confrontation of the reality of death, of all of these, just the deepest fears and pains that we have, comes out with treasure, with the lamp of the genie, with the sword of Excalibur, with the cup of Christ, with the powers of a Jedi. That the path through the cave is the most rewarding path. And then through the gift having been given with the confrontation of the terrible, you talk about how Crowley did all these horrible things. I don't advocate anything immoral, frankly. I would be a shitty person if I did. But I do advocate going into the darkest depths of the forest, going into the deepest pains of our emotional selves.
Yeah, but why? But just the question becomes why? How deep?
I'll tell you.
Yeah, how deep?
As deep as you can go. As deep as you can go.
What if as deep as you can go is like rape, murder?
No, not in behavior, in introspection. I'm not talking about holding the blade and doing something.
But is it not? I don't think it's something necessarily to be embraced. I think it's like you have lower impulse.
Yeah, I think I'm not talking about lower impulses. I'm talking about the emotional states that motivate lower impulses. Okay, say a kid's been beat by his father. Say a kid's been abused. Just hypothetically, that kid can behave on those impulses and become an abusive person, which often happens. There's a cycle to abuse. I think that's fair to say. Psychologists would echo that. I believe. But there's also the honesty and courageous, heroic process of, often with help. I mean, it's almost impossible to do without help, frankly, but I'm crazy enough to think that the help comes when it's needed, to go to those places inside of ourselves psychologically through meditation is such a cheap word, but through introspection, through honest introspection. And there's I've got dark places just like anybody, but my willingness to attempt just fucking attempt to integrate those parts of myself and say, man, I feel like retribution or vengeance or all of these other just terrible impulses that motivate terrible behavior are mine, and I can own them, and I can try to understand them, and I can move past them.
That's the concept of repentance, kind of, rather than integrating the shadow self and of saying, these are the dark aspects of me. I was born this way. I just want to, every once in a while I got to torture a cat or microwave a mouse. It's like,
yeah, no, I don't follow you on that.
Like, yeah, because there are people that are just like, hey, it's all part of it. It's all just natural. We got the shadow side, the light and the dark, and that's what the magic is about. Is integrating the light.
Yeah,
and the dark.
see, I disagree. I would say, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I would say that a person who goes and does malicious deeds with no remorse is missing the point. I think a person who integrates the shadow in terms of violence. Let's talk about violence. Is like a hunter. Is a hunter. You can go kill a deer if you know what you're doing, because then guess what? You got meat for a year. And there's a beautiful thing to that if you know what you're doing.
That's a very different thing. Like, it's killing a deer, but that's something that's necessary for human life, right? It's like it's necessary for us to.
Right. So I would say that person has more fully integrated their shadow than a person who has done despicable deeds like torturing small rodents. Okay. So I very clearly distinguish.
I guess my only, I guess what I'm just kind of thrown out there is that maybe a better there's probably a better way of explaining it than integrating the shadow, because when I hear integrating, it's kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna put that in my pocket, carry that with me. Oh, there's all this anger. Here's jealousy, here's greed.
Sir.
Right. I know, but I know that's not what you're saying, but I'm just like the word of like the shadow,
right.
rather than the word repentance just works so well, because it's like, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I do that keeps me away from the truth, and I have to stop doing this, and I have to take account of my actions and do what's right and turn from those old ways and become better in order to integrate. So it's more like a pushing that away. It's like a get behind me. I don't need this anymore. Here's the truth of it. Here's how I will react to this now. I'm not going to carry this greed. I'm not going to carry the shame. I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to understand the wounds, and I'm going to dress the wound up, and I'm going to pray for forgiveness for creating the wound. And it's kind of, I think that's kind of the way I see it. And, but it's, a lot of it comes down to how we explain it in language, but how we explain it in language does affect how we internalize the struggle too, right? Like how we narrate it to ourselves as we're going through these things. I think it's important.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess we have slightly different reactions to the word integrate. I think of it mathematically. So when you have a function, a mathematic function that with inputs gives certain outputs, you can either derive a new function or you can integrate it into a separate function. And when you derive, it becomes more base. Deriving is you have an overarching thing, and then you can have several derivations. But if you're going to integrate something, it has to leap up to a higher level of sophistication where all those constituent formulas are represented into the integrated function. So yeah, I feel it's okay to use the word, but I respect the fact that you don't feel like that word's fair. But to me, integrating is saying, okay, I have this impulse for a negative behavior. I have this other, feeling of having been treated unjustly, and I want to respond to that in kind. Yeah. Well, but I am a moral being. I know that I have to be a moral being to have any respect for myself. I know that there are ways of conducting myself that make me feel good, and there are ways of conducting myself that in the moment are rash or, defensive. I'm a very defensive personality type. That's something that I've recognized in myself and work really hard to manage. So integrating for me is saying, okay, I have all of this propensity for negativity, even though I might feel like it's justified in the moment or whatever, but I can integrate that into the larger thing so that the mechanism of those is not base. It's
but why not just discard it?
Because it's true, because it's real, because it's
yeah, but jealousy or greed or envy, like sure. They're real feelings. Yeah, you can really feel them, but that doesn't mean that they're like that they're useful, that they're actually something to carry
Well,
with us.
yes, sir, and that's yes, sir. That's the crux of the argument. They can be useful if they're properly integrated. You can walk up to somebody and say, you know, you're really successful, and I'm envy. It's envy. It's envy. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. But a person can own that. I can look at you and say, Tristan, you have built a business. I'm jealous. That's wonderful. Good for you. But I also
but you're not jealous though, because you're happy for somebody.
Why not? Why not? Why isn't that jealousy? It's still jealousy.
Jealousy and envy is like you don't want somebody to have it and you want it instead. It's like there's a cruelty behind it.
Sure. But there's a way of integrating that, yes, sir, into a more balanced perspective. Dude, for sure, you have a beautiful family. That's where
I'm picking hairs here. I'm splitting hairs probably.
I get it.
I think I might be splitting hair, but here's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, so instead of maybe it's not envy. I wouldn't say it's envy when you look at someone and say, oh, you've had a good business. I would love to do something like that. It's maybe that's more inspiration, right? I don't know.
Okay. I think yes, sir. I hear you.
I think the lower parts of our nature, it's not. That's a bad term to use even, but it's like our nature is actually good, but through our decisions, we take on all sorts of baggage. And we take on all this negativity. We take on all this. We reject the truth. And that's not our nature to reject the truth. We reject the truth and take on a lower fallen nature. That's, I mean, and it's a very, very important point to start at, because if we believe that that we are naturally envious, greedy, jealous, murderous, and full of rage, and that the lower that the passions, when they control us and when we're completely given over to them, that's normal, it's going to inform our worldview, right? And we're basically told that we're apes, right? That you're just monkeys and you just want to hump and recreate and reproduce and dominate other monkeys. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I think we're inherently made in the image and likeness of God. We have goodness. We are made good, but through our actions, we reject the good and we reject the truth. So, I mean, it sounds like I'm splitting hairs, and I don't think I'm not saying. I don't think you disagree. I don't believe that you disagree with that, but it's just I think the way we frame it can become really, really important. And
yes, sir.
It's a deep conversation. It's a long conversation.
I feel you, and I hope that we can continue it. In fairness, I respect your time, and I'd love to have another conversation, because I think that we can get into concepts and discussions that are nuanced and interesting, and I think there's a respect there in between us that allows for the transmission of knowledge and honest thought. So I really appreciate you. And
it's a good conversation to have for like 8 hours in front of a
fire. Right. Well, but in fairness, I think that having these kinds of things and documenting them and putting them out there is an important part of as myself saying, okay, I'm willing to put myself out there. Even if one person listens to it and is like, whoa, like that's some shit I've thought about, and that's fucking interesting. And these guys are, in different places in the world and they're doing different things, but they're friends, there's a foundation of friendship, and they're able to kick logistics and think. And that's, wow. I can't think in my school. I can't fucking speak my mind in this classroom. I can't fucking speak my mind in the boardroom or in meetings at my, agency that I work for. So this is a real thing that's very powerful. And so what I tend to think about that helps me a lot is that, first and foremost, disagreement is good. Disagreement is good. We need to disagree. If we both agreed, why the fuck would we even talk? What's the point? Right? I know what you're going to say. So why would
it's important to have, it's so important to have these conversations, but ultimately the goal, like really, I think we should all be trying to come to a place where we do agree and come to the truth, right? If we all seek the truth, and the truth is outside of ourselves and objective, then that should be the goal, to reach that objective.
Yes, sir. That's a lot of suppositions, though, because defining truth is very difficult. I mean, there is objective truth in terms of like Newtonian physics and reductionist materialism. There are things that are, but there also is unique perspective in the world, and each consciousness occupies a very specific point of view that is disparate from any other consciousness, and I think that's a beautiful thing. So,
no, but they're not, though. They're completely connected to and dependent on the Creator.
That's right. But yeah, I feel you. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
I was going to say truth has to come from outside. Like truth has to be objective, or we can't even have language. We can't even have, you can't have any, everybody has presuppositions, and everybody has to presuppose that there is truth, or else you can't have a conversation with somebody. Right? Like we have to agree that these words mean something.
Well, but and I feel you, but as we keyed in on earlier, some words mean different things to different people, and we have different languages in the world. And we have, so what I feel that is relevant to bring up in terms of what we were talking about a moment ago, in terms of our impulses. What is emotion? What is feeling? What's feeling worthy of our body? What's feeling to be discarded?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a really beautiful topic, because I think it highlights something that I've been really intrigued by recently. And one of the reasons why I've been interested to listen to Jordan Peterson, because he lectures on biblical stories. And then I was listening to an audio tape, Maps of Meaning, which is his more dense book. He wrote 12 Rules for Life. But in Maps of Meaning, he talks about something very specific, and that is that the mythic is real. Okay. So I've heard so often about our forefathers and so forth, that, you know, any creation myth, any ancient mythology, any, you know, paganistic religion was just a bunch of dumb guys looking around and going, you know, not having any scientific understanding of the world, and building up these descriptions and explanations for things that were just based on ignorance. But I've also now been intrigued by the supposition that instead of all ancient cultural wisdom being just ignorance of the scientific nature of things, let's say, they were more, how can I say, they were descriptions of the human condition in more nuance and fairness than are our current myths and you know,
they were real. The pagan religions were all real, and the gods of the pagan religions were really spiritual. They're spiritual entities, and these people would contact these entities through ritual and through you know, shamanic initiations and through all sorts of practices, and it definitely is real.
How about this you know, way of representing the idea that the human is a sovereign entity, is a sanctified body, is the you know, movement towards the ascension of Christhood. The person has the power of the word. The person has the power of good deed. The person has the power of charity. The person has the power of truth and kindness. Yeah. But guess what? There's the God of anger. There's the God of jealousy. There's the God of lust. There's the God of, you know, you name it.
Well, these are just we interface constantly with the spiritual world, and what I believe is these are and there's a demonic realm, and demons actually prey on our lower desires, and
why not? I hear you. But why not also too a heavenly realm?
There is.
That's fucking interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but that's the thing. But for the most part, people are interacting with the demonic realm. This is one of the issues. For the most part, people are more intrigued by it and interacting with that, and that's why we see. I mean, we all know it inside. It's like, and most of us have much of our life been tortured by these things. It's like
I feel you.
And yes, there is the heavenly realm. The heavenly realms. There are many. There are angels. There are demonic entities as well. And but ultimately, man is not sovereign. I would say man is not sovereign.
Really, that's interesting.
Yeah, we're not sovereign. We think we to a certain extent. All right, man is made in the image and likeness of God, and we have free will. But that doesn't mean that most people don't give that free will up. So man is, for the most part, man is not sovereign.
I hear you.
We are nothing without God. We're created, and we're in a world that was created. So we're not sovereign because we don't make up any of the rules. we can't make up the rules of gravity. We don't make up the rules.
I hear you. But you don't need to. Yes, sir. You don't need to make the game to be a sovereign player. You don't need to have
sovereign. There's one sovereign, and sovereign is king. Sovereign is ruler, and there is one sovereign, and that's God. And then there's man, who made in the image and likeness of God, and who through our will, through actually using our will and lining up our will with the will of God, which to some people looks like the renunciation of their own will, right? So because most of our own will is corrupted, is brought down in the lower passions, the greed, the murderousness, the envy, lust, and all this stuff gets played upon and preyed upon by demonic entities, which we allow. But us being sovereign, I would say that is very, very untrue. And I mean, look at addiction. I mean, yes, ultimately we can become free of addiction, but that's only through submission to the truth that we are addicted and that we need to be freed of that addiction, right? So I don't think we're truly sovereign. I'm a pain in the ass, Devin. I'm so sorry.
I appreciate it. Don't be sorry. I'm interested. I love having these kinds of conversations.
It's a great conversation. Yeah, it's all, you know, I'm not trying to like.
Bro, I love you and I disagree with you. And I think that that's very healthy. I think that that's extremely healthy.
How can we be sovereign if we are created and if we can't even create a speck of dust?
Because that's not what constitutes sovereignty. What constitutes sovereignty is free will. You can choose to say or do anything that you want.
Yeah.
I can try to manipulate you, but if I'm a good person, I'm not going to do that. Demonic entity.
It's only within the realm of the possible. We have free will.
Right, but we don't understand the realm of the possible. We don't understand what's possible. We never have.
We don't understand everything that's possible because we're not the mind of God. We live because we are created, and we live because the mind of God exists, but we don't know the whole mind of God, and that's part of it. But it doesn't mean that we are. I mean, that to me, that inherently means that we're not sovereign because we're not in charge. We're in charge of our own reactions, but we don't.
Which is everything.
But the sovereign, maybe I'm splitting hairs here again.
Yeah, maybe we just have a different understanding.
We have free will
of the word.
Free will, I would say, yeah, exactly. But I think there's a higher. I think free will is it's true that we do have free will.
That's all you need.
That's something that's created by the sovereign, and maybe I'm just splitting hairs on word choices.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that to deny, and I mean, we could try to come up with a different word. To deny the potential holiness of the individual is to welcome base behavior. But in my worldview, if you will, and I tend to try to have a worldview free of dogmatism. Like I like to try to be as open as possible because I think that's
a dogma.
That's
a dog.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But it's also it's also a flexible one. It's also one that's open to disagreement and discourse, because I'm not upholding a system of beliefs to the best of my ability. I'm sitting here saying I'm Devin, and all I can speak for is Devin. Period. That's all. That's the only entity that I have dominion over. But I take that very seriously because it's the only entity that I have to answer for. And through that, I can build friendships. I can build relationships with people that are, with my wife. I can heal relationships in my family that have had trauma, and that gives me a great deal of power in and of myself. And I think that that's something to be celebrated. And does that denigrate or take away the place of the holy, creator? No, absolutely not. To me, it's a very high call to try to understand how to live in accordance with the highest laws, if you will.
Great points. Now, but how do we know that this is not a false dialectic, the individual versus the collective? Now, this is one of the problems with modernity and with rationalism, is it sets up a lot of false dialectics. Materialism versus spiritualism. Material versus spirit, body and soul. These are not, you don't need these things to be separate. The individual and the collective are both very important. And
if I may, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The fault of libertarianism is it deifies the individual. The individual is only deified through God. The individual requires God to be deified.
Fair
the
enough.
The individual itself is not God just because the individual is the individual.
Fair enough. But first of all, I was going to say that, as you say, the individual and the group are both important, but I was going to say that one can't get lost in the other. There can't be a tyrannical leader of the group, and that's the most important. And there can't be a loss of identifying individuality through concession of joining a group. They both have to still have their identity.
The tyrannical leader of the group, what if that's God?
Right. So that's what I was going to say. So you're saying the deification of the individual only happens through union with God, to paraphrase what you had said. So
or it becomes a Luciferian ideology where the individual through his own will becomes God.
Okay, fair enough. So what I'm asking,
which is an inversion and a twisting of the truth, because there's a morsel of truth in that the individual can be deified through the grace of God, through the submission to the will of God, which is a greater will than our own. But they twist it, and Luciferians say, no, it's just our own will is Lucifer, our intellect is Lucifer, and through our will, we will become deified, and we will become gods of all of matter, which is all of creation is just matter, they believe. So there's a lot. I know there's a lot to unpack there.
I hear you. Well, first and foremost, I'm not, nor do I aspire to be in any way aligned with Luciferianism. So let's just get that out of the way first.
No, I'm not saying you are, but that's like materialism is a Luciferian.
Fair enough. And I hear you. Secondly, I understand the argument, I feel, where without the representation and honor and respect of the outside organizing principle, the divinity outside, the existence of God, putting that importance on the individual can be a real pitfall in terms of morality and behavior. I get the argument. So my question is,
but that's at its core, symbolically, that is the Luciferian religion is the fall represent.
Yes, sir.
And you have all of history as this rebellious revolution, right?
Right. So I hear
revolution is Luciferian in general.
Okay, so my question then is, fair enough. Like Lucifer was the first one to say, hey, I've got it right. Let's get the fuck out of this, this tyranny. Okay, and there's a romantic notion there, right? That the rebellious amongst us can hold on to. Okay, so my question though is this: if the self, in and of the self, is not a proper seat for divinity, and divinity comes from the external, and the self, let's say, is in the Christian tradition sullied and marred by original sin and fallible and in the throes.
No, we don't believe that. Well, maybe Catholic.
Okay, so that's a different thing. So forget that. Let's just say this: if the seat of divinity is not firmly planted in the self, in the sovereign self, then who's to say the mechanism by which it works in the external? By whose conduit are you interfacing with this external divinity? Because I would say, for me, from my personal belief, I can do so, and I do it in the ocean, and I do it on a mountain, and I do it when I'm open, when my heart is open with people who love or care for me. I do it when true words come out of my mouth. Now, does that mean that I'm holy and that there is no external holiness? No, not at all. It means that sometimes when I'm in touch with a greater power, if you will, I feel that I'm in line with that external holiness. But I still uphold the idea that it's happening through me. I don't.
Yeah, no, obviously, you have your own individual soul. You have your own individual existence. But that communion with the divine doesn't happen just because of us. We require God to commune with.
Okay, so then how do you define God, I guess, is the question. Because
the creator of all things, visible and invisible.
Yes, sir. Okay. So how do you know, and that's what better simple way of describing the thing that should be communed with, the thing that is overarching above all,
the creator of all things.
Yeah,
right? So
fair enough.
Worship things. You worship things. You worship,
So my question is this. Yes, sir. How do you know when you're in accordance with that, with Godhood?
Truth is revealed, right? So truth is only revealed, but through God. Truth is revealed by God.
That's interesting.
So it happens through interface, with your consciousness and your soul, right? So it's like you mentioned your heart, and that's a big part of it too, right? Opening up our heart to the reality, to the truth. That doesn't mean the heart as an organ, right? We're talking about something more than just the physical.
See, yes, sir. I understand what you're saying, but I think that the two can't be divorced. There's an interesting thing that came into my kind of zone, and that is the heartbeat is not arbitrary. Rhythm is not meaningless. Music is not just a random occurrence.
Exactly. There's higher orders of things. There's things that are non-physical, and there are non-physical concepts that inform the manifestations of physical reality.
Yes, sir. I mean, and we can put words on that.
That's why we say we believe in one God, creator of all things, visible and invisible.
And that's
Right.
beautiful. And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I suppose my impulse is then, hey, let's go talk with him. Let's go ride the waves of his glory. Let's go try to learn how to purify ourselves through his
Exactly.
grace. You know what I mean? There tends to be an impulse towards ceremony, towards what do they call the sacred ceremonies?
Yeah, all of nature has to come back into harmony with God, because ultimately all of nature has fallen. Right. I mean, that's in our worldview. That's what we believe. Now, if some people don't believe that, they believe
Yeah,
that
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that there's still a lot of hope, and I think it's latent in every human
But
person.
you have to be. We're fallen, though. That doesn't, just because there's hope. Yes, there's hope. There's hope. There's salvation, but that doesn't mean that all of creation, that all of the world that we live in now, not all of creation, but all of the world is fallen. Right. I mean, it's like you have the animals rape, murder, steal from each other. There's death. Death isn't natural. That's why we. That's why we.
You don't think death? You don't think death is natural?
No, that's the thing. Death isn't natural. So it's like death only came into existence after the fall.
That's interesting.
That's why that's why we abhor it. That's why we hate it. Because it's not natural. And if we say death is natural, and if we believe death is natural in the naturalistic worldview, then the next step becomes, well, let's take control of death because it's a natural process. Of course, it's our position to manipulate these natural processes, so we'll just institutionalize death, and that's what we see now. We have people, in Canada. This lady just told me the other day, she was like, "Dude, my best friend just died. She was like, she got mad cow." I was like, "What? Friend died of mad cow?" She's like, "Yeah, in Canada, as if you get a diagnosis of something like that, you have the right to, I forget what she called it, but it's medical euthanasia." So we do see the worldview right now. It's this seems like a tangent, but it ties in. We're mechanizing death. We're embracing death as if it's part of life, and we even see people talking in the media about, well, what do we do with all these old people? Grandma and grandpa, they're getting real old. They sure do cause a lot of carbon. Those people are a lot of resources are going. What if we took, Bill Gates even said this? He was like, well, if we were to have things called the death panels, and we would just these resources that these people are using as they age, maybe these could be used for teachers or for engineers instead. So he's basically, is a nice, cool way of saying, like, let's kill grandma and grandpa, get rid of them because they don't suit us anymore in the materialist rationalist worldview, right? So it's like the death, the way we view death is really important. And I know it sounds crazy, right, to say like death isn't natural, but that's the modern world. Our paradigm shapes what we think is normal, what we think is good, bad, right, and wrong. And we believe that death is actually not natural, that Adam and Eve would not have died, and they would have been in their incorruptible state that they were created in before they fell into corruption through choice, through free will, not because God is bad, God is mean, God made everybody fall because God made flaws in the system, which is the Gnostic view. No, it's because through our own will, through the first man's own will. It's not like we're responsible for all of this. We're not responsible for all of death because of original sin. We're responsible for our own sins. We're responsible for our own, mistakes. But yeah, death's not natural, and it didn't come into play until after the first man and woman fell. And through listening to the serpent, through falling, through the whispers of fallen angelic beings, falling into this lesser reality that we're now, in today, which is still God created death so we wouldn't have to be eternally tortured by disconnection from God. Right, so it's like, it's not, God didn't create death, but God.
Well, yeah, hold on. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. You can't say you can't say death is not natural and then that God created death. God can't create something that is unnatural.
No, I didn't create. But this is the natural outcome. This was the outcome of our fall. Was He puts death into the world. The ground is cursed. You'll till the soil. You will live. Your heel will be bruised, and you will. You'll toil all the days of your life. And so the very ground was cursed. That's what, we have thorns, we have thickets, we have difficulty. This is why we seek to leave this state of, fallen nature and of death and of destruction, because it's not natural. We don't want death because it's not natural. So God created us incorruptible, and through our own choices, we took on corruptibility. We took into ourselves corruptibility, and we fell. So
Yeah,
death
I don't
wasn't,
know, man.
God didn't like in our worldview, God didn't create death, and like man wasn't created to die. And
Yeah,
that's why we
I don't
have
know.
eternal life and we have salvation and we seek eternal life because that's our heritage. So we have, through the resurrection, we re-enter eternity.
Yeah, but
And
I
through
mean,
through purification and through cleansing, we re-enter eternity in communion with God.
yeah, bro, I genuinely appreciate you sharing, and I don't buy really any of that. But you know,
But
to take
you
nothing
can
away
just
from
say you
your.
don't buy it, but that's just you just say you don't buy it. But why? I mean, what is
Well,
in
I'll
your
tell you.
worldview? What is death? So what
Yeah,
is
I'll
death
tell
and where
you.
does it come from? Yeah.
The Ouroboros is an ancient symbol. It's been around forever. Shiva is the creator and the destroyer. Kali. In every ancient tradition, there's always been a representation of destruction in death and in other ways. There's been the Tibetan
Because
Book of
all
the
these
Dead.
ancient cultures worshipped demons and worshipped the fallen ones.
I disagree. I think that there's always been an interplay between the holy and the base. There's always been there's always been an understanding of a propensity for both good and bad, you know,
Yeah.
divinity and evil. And I think
Yeah.
that the balance, that the walk between the darkness and the light is a real powerful metaphor. It's represented in the yin yang. They are both order and chaos, and there's one inside the other. And to be able to balance in between those is the foundation of an integrated human. And I think that the second that we think we understand, we're not walking that line anymore.
That's a foundation. But you think you understand that is the line to be walked.
Well, I think that walking the line means that I have to be open to what I don't understand, as well as carrying the virtue and the orienting principles of what I have come to learn, you know,
Yeah.
in parallel, in union, and that
Yeah.
I should be willing to uphold, you know, my mental map, my worldview to anybody else, and give of what value there is in my, you know, representation of the world, as well as being open to everybody else's. So a powerful idea that I've seen was, or that I've you know, heard of, is that the map is not the territory. The menu is not the meal. So any representation of reality is not reality. Reality is reality. And we don't.
Yeah, but then how do we know what's good and bad and right and wrong?
We feel it.
But you know that you felt, you know, I mean, sometimes we feel that it's right to hurt somebody.
No,
right?
not
it's right to hit somebody.
Not once it's done. Not once it's over. We all feel remorse. If a person doesn't feel remorse, they have like real issues. And I would argue that that's not the rule.
But if people don't feel remorse, they also, in certain ways, they believe they have power.
I can't speak for those individuals. I don't feel that way.
I hope so.
Well, I mean, I feel like there is a external, you know, orienting principle, and call it God, call it whatever you will. I honor it. I feel like when I do right, things work. And I don't mean just in one.
But why not? But balancing right and wrong, yin and yang, you have darkness and light. I mean, why not? So if we go to the extremes of darkness, we could just balance it out with extremes of light. Right? So it's all just this balance.
No, you can't, because going to one side is to become mad in the dissolution into chaos. To go to the other side is to become a robot and to be mechanized into a system of rigorous behavior patterns. So there needs to be the animal still. There needs to be the magician. There needs to be the creative impulse. It can't just be, you know, retribution and vengeance and anger, and it can't just be holier than thou, perfect, wonderful all the time because I'm some priest or something. It has to be, I have the capacity to do evil. I do, but I choose to do good. And if somebody tries to do evil,
but how do we know
I can
what's
block
good?
that? You feel
how
it.
Do we know what's
feel
how do
it.
We know what's good?
The individual is, this is my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. I don't represent any group. I don't have any, you know, you know, anything to sell. It's just that I in my own experience of life, and from what I've gathered of learning from other people's experiences of life, we know when we're doing right. Come on now, you know when you do good in the universe, and you know when you do bad. I know when I do bad. I feel terrible. My body tells me.
Yeah, for sure. But the body can also be programmed to think that very bad things are very good. I mean, you could program a person to
not forever.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's forever?
Yeah, good question. Good
What's the
question.
military? What is the military? You know, what is,
And there you go. That's a real deep, topic. I
seriously.
really struggle with that. Yeah. Well, it's people that feel a great call to duty and honor, and people that, build a lot of their understanding of virtue on the tenets of respect and
Yeah.
courage, and then are maybe, in a more pacifist viewpoint, manipulated to do harm in the name of good. That's why I'm scared of dogmas. That's why I'm scared of ideologues. That's why I turn away from systematic ways of thinking.
But that is an ideology in and of itself, because to say that you reject all ideologies, that's embracing an ideology.
I didn't say that. I never said that. What I said was,
but to say that we should have no dogma, that is a dogma.
I didn't say that. I said I'm scared of dogmatic thinkers. What I'm trying to say is that there is a value towards building a scaffolding around the building of experience. Call the scaffolding every logic chain that you have ever made in your brain. Yeah. When I do this, this happens. This is a thing that exists. This, is that. Every single learned fact is in your brain, and it constitutes a large mental map. And that's the map, but it's not the territory. That's the menu, but it's not the meal. So there is a value towards a scaffolding around the building of the experience. Of course there is. You have to be able to think, to do. Otherwise we're just
we interpret every experience through our worldview. Every experience gets filtered through the worldview.
Yes, sir. But there also is experience outside of that worldview. When you dance, when you sing, when you ride a wave, when you're with your
that's
family.
all. It's still interpreted. It's all still interpreted through our worldview.
I think that there is raw experience, the power of which can overwhelm and short circuit mental mappery, mental navigation. And I think
sure. If you,
pure.
Yeah, of course, but that doesn't mean that we don't filter all experiences, including that experience, through the worldview and through the paradigm. At the paradigm level, everything.
Yes, sir. But and I agree, and I don't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. But what I'm trying to posit is that the sanctification of the individual, initiation, is the representation of each individual being in charge of their own filter. And saying, okay, maybe there's no way to be objective. There's no objective journalists, for example. But there is a way of owning our own biases. I can write an expose or an article, and I can, in the first paragraph, say, these are my experiences, this is my bias, this is my perspective, now here's my attempt to be objective. And that first paragraph gives me a level of, I don't know the right word, that somebody that just says, this is the way it is, doesn't have. And I think that owning our own scaffolding is really important, because then we can use other people's scaffolding. I think that's a good metaphor, because the house is the place of experience. Being in the house is the true nature of humanity. Living. Yeah. But we often too much navigate our own scaffolding, right? And say, well, the house looks like this because I could build this up this way and that's the shape. And the person that's really alive doesn't need the fucking scaffolding because they're in the dining room eating the meal, right? I'm looking through the window, So I think that that's the power of the idea of the sovereign individual, is that at once having a way to navigate society and say, okay, I've learned how to be rational. I've learned how to understand logic from a surface level. I've learned, what Eastern religion constitutes and the ways that I've experienced being near it. But I also know how I feel. And I can't really put that into words, but I can feel it and I can own it and I can try to articulate it in a way that is constructive. And then guess what? I'm alive. And that's really powerful.
But like obviously a worldview goes beyond linguistic representations and linguistic formulations, but it doesn't mean that the worldview doesn't filter all of our experiences. Right? I mean, it's, our worldview is what we interpret reality from. And that's like the assumptions on what the body is, the assumptions on what the body is, the assumptions that the stimulus that we receive from the external world is real. These are all part of a worldview. Some people don't even assume that. Some people think, oh, it could just be a simulation, dude.
Yeah, that brain. Yeah, I hear you. Brain in the jar and all that.
So there's certain assumptions that go into the worldview, and that's what we filter our reality through. So if we believe that, it's just our core beliefs. Most of them unexamined by, most people, right? Like the core beliefs are what we filtered our entire experience through.
Right. But I guess my point is that is not static. There are things called hallucinogenic drugs psychedelic drugs. And you know as well as I do that those change that filter. And just
For
the
some
very,
people.
for some people, fair enough. But the very idea, the very propensity for that filter to change hints at the fact that filter is malleable, is under your own control, and that's a scary thing. It's easier to hide behind the filter.
It doesn't mean that there's no truth. It just because we can change our perspective.
I don't think there's no truth. I just think that everybody's truth is different because we all have different perspectives. There's no one truth that should be imposed on all people, because that leads us to.
But there are many truths that are imposed on all. There are many truths that are imposed on all people.
I agree,
including death. Right? There are truths that are imposed on all people.
Well, see,
we get to poop, we got to eat, we got to shit, you got gravity.
Right, but are those? But are yes, sir. But are eating and shitting imposed on you by coercion from an evil force, or is it just something that we do? Like, don't?
No, this is what we inhabit. It's something that is imposed on us. It's not something that we choose. Like, we didn't choose to be born. We don't choose to die.
Well, some people believe that we were choose to be born. That's the whole astrological thing, right? We choose where and when we're born, and there's numbers and numerology and shit. So some people believe that we did. I agree. I think this is really getting to be a deep philosophical discussion, and a lot of it comes down to semantics. But I just appreciate being able to have an open-minded discussion, and I appreciate you, man. I don't know that we're going to
conversation. It's a good conversation to have. I don't think it comes down to semantics, though. I think really, I don't know. I mean, if you get enough time, you can hash things out with people. But
yes, sir.
At its I don't know. I think we started this discussion talking about how reality, the reality we live in now, is kind of formed by this greater cultural these beliefs that people have at a grand scale culturally, and nihilism, and the belief that there is no truth being kind of the core of many of the issues that we see, or all of the issues that we see today in society. And I think it's a good spot to we've come full circle. I think really it ends up coming down to our worldview and what we believe about reality, how we interpret the reality we live in. This is all informed by our worldview, and I think it's just it's cool to be able to talk on long form about these things.
I agree.
10-minute, 10-second snippets and stuff like that.
I agree. Well, bro, I value you and I honor you, and I appreciate your time, and I'd like to continue talking. I'd like to talk to you again, in a month or whatever is a good time frame, and just have some good discussions, because I think it could be fruitful. I think it could be positive, and we're both doing our things. You're doing big things, and I'm proud of you. And I'm a little jealous, but I
ain't jealous, man. Look at you.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. And that's another potential pitfall. But you feel me? Like, I want to give to you the energy that a person who has known you from many years back, has seen the path that you've taken, the choices that you've made, the things that you've built, and is happy and proud and delighted that you've been able to do that for yourself. And I'd like to give you a cheers when we can.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, dude. It's always nice connecting, man. I can't believe. I totally forgot that we had connected the day that Ryder was born. It would have been September 26, 2017. So,
and
2016.
Yes, sir. To your point earlier, not to interrupt you, I apologize. Yeah. Something told me to reach out to you. It was weird. It was, and it was like, I don't know. It was a feeling. It was a feeling that I felt that I needed to express, and I did, and it meant that I heard you come back that you just had another baby boy. Like, how freaking fantastic! So how many kids do you have? Do you have two girls and a boy, or do you have a girl?
No, just
a girl and a boy. That's right.
Yeah.
How many years apart are they?
Ari's 7.5. Right? No, Ari's 7. She just turned 7 in May. She's born on May 7th, and Ryder he'll be 3 in September 28th. I said 26th, but it's 28th.
I see.
Our wedding anniversary is the 26th, and his birthday is the 28th. I always mix them up.
Well, that's very, very special.
Pretty cool.
Very special.
You guys have what's up with your wife, man? I still haven't met her.
I will introduce you. She's a sweetheart. She's from Brazil. Her name is Isabela Oliveira Bevilacqua Triantos. She's
Yeah, Luke, you even got like a Brazilian sounding last name, dude.
she speaks Portuguese. She's very sweet. She's very good for me. We're very opposite in our temperament and our personality type, which can be
She's real
extreme.
chill.
She's so chill, dude. She's so chill. She's so chill. She's just like.
But I've seen you be pretty chill at times. I know you can chill out. You could snap into a really chill mode, but then you could also be go, go, go.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to manage that. It's hard for me to do that in an effective way. Part of the thing that I've been holding on to that's helped me a lot is training, exercise, physical training, and that keeps my mind right. You know,
we gotta wear out the body, man. Dude, you know what I did yesterday? I played soccer with Ecuadorians.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, Devin.
They can play soccer, can't they?
Dude, these guys can play some fucking soccer.
That's awesome.
These guys,
awesome.
Dude, they've like been playing together since they're little kids, man. We got stomped yesterday. Our team, we lost like 8-2.
Oh,
but we have like uniforms and everything, man.
Oh,
it's
how
like
cool.
There's referees. We got a flag dudes and referees. We got a there's a full stadium, soccer stadium in town, and everyone plays. Like every neighborhood, every barrio has a. Yeah, there's 13 teams, and it's like a 5-month season.
Wow.
The first game, we tied our first game. We got spanked the second game. But I'm sore, man. I got the first game. I was sore for like 9 days afterwards. Bad.
What position do you play?
Midfield. So I'm
okay.
The whole time.
Okay. Midfield's the crux of your team, man.
Well, you know, our team didn't do too well this last game, so the first game we did really good, but this last game there was very little cohesion, right? We didn't have very much. We weren't flowing together very well at all. There's just a lot of just booting it. People are just kicking it up, and
I love team sports. I haven't played team sports for a long time. My brother does like a beer league for hockey. And my brother's taller and heavier than I am. We're both tall and skinny. He's like 6'4", 6'5". So he gets out on the ice on ice skates, and immediately he's like the most imposing, physically impressive guy. He can't skate to save his life. It's fucking hilarious. And he doesn't have that killer instinct. He doesn't have that want to go and impose his will on the play. And it's interesting. I heard this that one of the reasons why potentially we gravitate so much towards sport and why sport is such a lofty pursuit and not this base thing is that it's a representation in a certain way of thinking of war, and at its best it's an alternative to right, as opposed to two nations hurting one another physically with violence and killing one another. They say, all right, we got an agreement. We'll send our toughest guys. You send your toughest guys, and we'll fucking work it out. And then that's what it is, right? And there's a real honor to being one of the warriors on the field, isn't there? You feel like, all right, I've got the pride of my town on my shoulders.
Ain't no honor when you lose 8-2.
Sure.
8-2.
Sure there is. There's honor in defeat. Just shame and guilt. Yeah.
The whole town was shaming us. They took palm leaves and just beat us with them as we left the field.
Yeah, right.
We had to sacrifice the goalie, dude. It was terrible.
Just on a spit, just spit roasted on the goal. You just
Dude, in Ecuador, they sacrificed the winning team in Ecuador. We're like the Maya. Yeah, it's an honor.
That's funny.
That's what the Maya they used to do. They used to think that the Maya sacrificed the losing team, but it was actually the winning team.
Is that right?
You read some of the chronicles, and it's the winning team that was sacrificed, and they saw it as an honor to. Yeah, they would take mushrooms during the human sacrifice ceremonies, and the spirits would tell them to, what to do, and they would divination and stuff. Just high on mushrooms, sacrificing people. Yeah, crazy. You read some of the conquistadors, not even conquistadors, but these chronicles. A lot of them are just from like Catholic monks back in the day, and there's a lot of interesting stories. But yeah, dude, it wasn't that intense here though. There were no sacrifices.
Well, I'm glad. Maybe a chicken. Chicken might have been an appropriate level of sacrifice.
Yeah, no, they do that in the jungle. They sacrifice chickens to get rid of spirits from people.
Sure. Well, I didn't understand the whole idea of sacrifice until recently, at least in a way that was explained to me, and that is that sacrifice is a mechanism to make holy, the group or something. It's the giving. It's in the same way that we sacrifice things for goals. Like if we have a goal of like going to school or like building a business or, having a constructive relationship. We have to sacrifice things that are no longer necessary or would get in the way of the full expression of that thing.
Well, even a workout, you sacrifice your comfort to
there you
get
go.
a heavy,
there you go.
intense
That's a good
workout in.
Right.
But yeah, things get more subtle, and it gets a little more interesting when you look at human sacrifice, of course, and even animal sacrifice in a lot of the pagan religions. So it definitely is really interesting. But yeah,
I mean, we do the Greek festival, and they put a goat on the spit. And I mean, I'm a meat eater, and there's something honorable about just facing the reality of the fact that like the gyra that I'm eating is a goat, like is a fucking living, breathing, thinking, animal, and that to celebrate its passing in the community, in the family, in the sanctity of positive representation, positive, behavior. It's like a beautiful thing. It's not good for the goat, I guess, but there's a component of sacrifice that I can see being something to be understood on a deeper level that I don't really understand. I don't mean to be some expert on sacrifice. I really am not.
And don't come play soccer in Ecuador if you don't want to know about sacrifice.
Well, I'd say I won't lose, but you're telling me that the winners lose, so I can play all day. I'll just fucking kick own goals the whole time.
At the end of the game, you just flip a coin, and that's a good sacrifice. So it doesn't matter who won.
No, thank you. Well, bro, I have to take my grandpa to a doctor's appointment at 2:00. It's
right on, man.
So we're gonna start rolling. I can't tell you how good it feels, how appreciative I am to be able to connect with you again, and I would like to do it more regularly.
Yeah, dude. No, anytime, dude. Hit me up. Yeah, we could always talk on or off camera. Whatever about whatever you want to talk about, man. You got my number.
Yes, sir. Well, I don't know if I have your cell number. I have.
What's my here? I'll just give. I'll give you. I've got.
You want to just send me it, or I can type it in?
Oh yeah. I'll type it to you here.
Okay, cool.
Just in case. Let's see. Well, do you have Skype?
Yeah, I think. No, maybe not. I think I only have FaceTime on this computer.
But you have Skype on your phone or something?
Yes. I believe so.
Let's see. Because I have your Skype. Chatted over a year ago.
Yeah, I got it. I got it on my phone.
There. All right. I'm just going to wave at you, and I'll send you my number in there. Because I have to look at – I don't know my number. I have to look for it in my phone.
Got it.
It's like 09 something.
Crazy face.
There you go. Yeah. All right. So you got me on Skype. Yeah.
Well, bro, I love you, and I'm happy for you, and I can't wait.
Much love, brother. Yeah, man. I got so many good memories. Remember on Halloween when we took acid?
I have told so many people that story. That was one of the most joyous I've ever been. My face hurt from how much I had laughed that entire night. I was just I was laughing from ear to ear. We walked all the way down Pacific. You were Kermit the Frog, and I was
you were Bert. You were Bert.
no, isn't it? Ernie's the one with the fat face, isn't it? And Bert's or is it Bert? I mixed the two up.
You were the yellow faced one. You were Bert. I remember Bert.
And you had a trench coat on, and I swear to God, I felt like we were in Toontown, and everybody was what they were dressed up as, and I was just having the best time. And I do remember that. I do remember.
Funny times, man. Santa Cruz. When's the last time you were in Santa Cruz?
Oh, we go over there all the time. I try to go over there. We're in Santa Clara here, and going to the ocean is a real sanctuary for me. So I try to go surf 3 Mile, and Giovanni is teaching surfing now, but he's available every once in a while. So
he's teaching surfing in Santa Cruz.
Right.
That's so cool. Tell G I said what's up. Tell him I said hi.
I will.
I see him. I'll like if I see him on Instagram, I try to like his things. But I mean, most people are not. I'm on Instagram for business and stuff. So
I feel you.
Yeah. But yeah, brother. It's really good getting to connect with you, man. Yeah, love you, dude. Good connecting. Always down to talk. And have a good day, man.
Later, brother. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Wish we could talk longer, man. I'll see you later.
I don't know what I'm doing here.
Hit stop recording.
Okay.
And then to make sure you can download the recording, right? Because if you just close the program, you might. I don't know if you'll lose it.
I see. So stop video like that.
Well, maybe the record button down at the bottom will work.
One participant can share time, share, manage participants, invite, mute. Let's see. Choose for video settings, share, end meeting.
Okay, so share, chat, record. Okay, yeah, just do end meeting then.
Okay.
and see what happens.
Okay. And then it says
But you should.
cancel.
It'll prompt you to like download the video that it recorded. I think.
Okay.
Just to make sure you don't lose it.
Do I hit leave meeting or end meeting for all?
Do end meeting for all.
Okay. All right, bro. If I don't talk to you, I'll see if I can get this recording. I really hope that we did record it. It was a beautiful conversation.
It says recording. It recorded it, but I'm sure it'll be there. If not, we could just do it all again. We'll
all right, deal.
we'll get a transcript and we'll read it.
All right. Good man. Talk to you soon.